The simple reality is, Star Wars Explained maliciously and deliberately targeted several channels on YouTube under the notion that these channels have spread hateful and bigoted messages and ultimately violated YouTube's terms of service and guidelines. And as such, Star Wars Explained asserts that it is their moral obligation to speak for the fandom and to defend marginalized actors and actresses against hatred. Their cause is just. People love to claim the moral high ground. Unfortunately for Star Wars Explained and everybody involved with this campaign, there is nothing moral about what they did. Star Wars Theory is one of my favorite channels on YouTube. I've been watching his videos for years, and I've never once heard any hateful rhetoric from him. I think he makes great content and adds value to the Star Wars fandom. His videos theorizing what-if scenarios are really well done and demonstrate the fun side of being a part of this fandom. We all love to do this. We love to theorize. Theory is especially gifted at this, and has appealed to me over the years and so many others with his ideas and what-if scenarios. He's always upping his game as a content creator and has worked incredibly hard to get to his level of success. Not only that, but he's overcome many things in his life. Health issues, anxiety. Not only that, he's physically kind of a beast. He works out a lot and is very fit. And that's another reason why I consider him to be an example to follow. He just strikes me as a well-rounded person who simply loves Star Wars. See, people are attracted to passion, and it's hard to fake passion. Star Wars fans can be very passionate. It's what we're known for. And so it makes sense that they would want to follow and support a channel like Star Wars Theory. And I'm fully convinced that the way to become successful on YouTube is to be passionate about something and show this to people. Now, let me say also, I would never idolize anybody on YouTube. Or at least, I hope I don't do this because, idolatry is a big no-no for Jesus, and rightfully so. Because I recognize, as someone with a Christian worldview, that we are sinners. We are all sinners. We are all broken and very flawed. I'm a living example of this. If you follow me on social media or YouTube, you'll see my flaws very quickly and very easily. Star Wars Theory is not perfect. No one is. That's my point. He would never claim to be. Now, that's not a free pass to be a terrible person, but being imperfect is a far cry from being a terrible person. You know what terrible people do? They slander others with lies. Now, we'll circle back to that towards the end of the video. Before we get any further, let's finish with this comparison. Let's take a look at Star Wars Explained. I know far less about Alex and Molly than I do Star Wars Theory because, frankly, I've never been a big fan of these two. I've never been a big fan of their channel. In the past, it had nothing to do with any agendas they supported or anything they had necessarily said or done wrong. I simply found their content to be boring. That's a personal preference, and I can happily admit that, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that. Now, to their credit, they know a lot about Star Wars, and they've demonstrated this knowledge many times. On trivia shows and all their extensive lore videos, they know their stuff. But in the midst of all this knowledge, I think they are lacking a key element in what makes a channel's content great. They lack passion, and it shows. They're not very expressive or animated or speak with much conviction. They're kind of monotone. They're basically walking Star Wars encyclopedias, which, yes, in a sense is impressive, but it's not especially interesting or compelling. It's useful, just like an encyclopedia or dictionary, but it's not a page turner. Star Wars Theory, on the other hand, is like a great graphic novel, which needs two things: good writing and good design. Good graphic design, good comic design. I don't know the word. Anyways, the visuals and the writing, they both need to be compelling. On a side note too, Star Wars Explained doesn't seem to really know how to market. Their thumbnails are kind of boring. Their choice of content is boring to me. And it doesn't help that they're really on board with literally everything Disney Star Wars releases, which makes you a boring person to listen to. No one likes a butt kisser, and they've got it bad for Disney and Lucasfilm. It's very obvious. They don't seem to be able to be objective. In an era where Star Wars as a franchise is at an all-time low, doubling down on the mediocrity is tone deaf and out of touch with the fandom. It ironically means that even though Star Wars Explained claims to speak for the fandom, they are very much in the minority now. It may have been less so in the past, but the jig is up. And to me, they lost all credibility a long time ago.
You have lost.
The reality is, Star Wars needs a swift kick in the butt. The franchise is completely missing the mark, and The Acolyte was sort of the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people. Even with a massive budget and a huge number of critics supporting it, no amount of shilling for this show could save it from this simple numbers game. And the numbers don't lie. It was a flop. It's as simple as that. It was a bad show, and they should be embarrassed to have released something as messy and ill-conceived as this show.
What's that?
Who was the last person to talk to Kama?
That's Basil. Is he or they with us?
Done!
If you, as a Star Wars content creator, keep pushing this narrative that Star Wars is fine, there's nothing wrong with it, and the problem is probably you, you're not going to win anyone to your side. Star Wars Explained cannot deal with these two simple truths. Star Wars is in a terrible place, and Disney has done a terrible job with the franchise. They could improve it. They could possibly even fix it, but they keep doubling down on their mistakes and have essentially declared war on the fandom, gaslighting them at every opportunity. This is not a great move for many reasons. Star Wars is a broken franchise because of a quality issue. Disney and Lucasfilm need to stop blaming all of their problems on the fans. You can't have it both ways. It's a really incomprehensible strategy, and I don't really understand how on earth people like Kathleen Kennedy still have their job. Hopefully, there are better times ahead, but that remains to be seen. Truth number 2. Star Wars Theory is always going to be more successful than them. Alex and Molly are losing subscribers in the thousands by the day. You can see the stats for yourself. Star Wars Theory is growing all the time. Just the other day, it looks like he jumped up 10,000 subscribers. And I think he sits around 3.3 million or something like that, 3.34 million, and I'm not sure. But he's in the multi-million subscriber count now. He is the biggest Star Wars channel on the planet. That's not to say there aren't other successful channels out there, but he's definitely the most successful, and that's worth noting. You know what? I'll add in a third truth for Alex and Molly to swallow too. Star Wars Theory has won this fight, and rightfully so. The judges have spoken, and Theory has been 100% vindicated. Now, Alex and Molly have nothing but the company of shame and consequence, except they won't admit any wrongdoing, of course, and now are clearly playing the victim card. What's so tragic about this, because I believe peace is a superior way, is that this was all completely unnecessary and avoidable. There was a path to peace, but Star Wars Explained and all these other channels and all these other people joined in with them to declare war in a malicious and vindictive strike against an innocent man. A simple private conversation could have solved all of this, and maybe even helped these creators unite in a way we've never seen before. But this power couple, Alex and Molly, in their jealousy and bitterness under the guise of a moral crusade against bigotry and hate, chose to deliberately and maliciously attack an innocent man in an attempt to take away his livelihood and the livelihood of so many others too. And I understand this campaign was targeted to the 3 other channels more so than his, but let's not kid ourselves. They are absolutely trying to take down Star Wars Theory and have been trying to do so for a while now, it seems. And I'll say this too, although I'm not a big fan of Geeks and Gamers, Nerdrotic, or Ryan, I've especially found myself frustrated at Geeks and Gamers at times because for some reason Jeremy seems to really love throwing shade to the Raylo community, and as a member of the Raylo community myself, I don't really appreciate that constant shade, especially since I think it's unwarranted. I think that people in the Raylo community that have done wrong are in the minority, but that is another conversation for another time.
Raylos are weird. Solo lost money. I had to do Raylos are weird. Solo lost money. Raylos are weird. And we will talk to you later.
But these channels, Geeks and Gamers, Erotic, and Ryan Cannell, they appeal to a certain point of view, and that's fine. A lot of people like their content. They like listening to them rant and rave. And the reality is, I find myself agreeing with them more and more as time goes on. My issue with channels like theirs is more of their delivery. I think they're a bit harsh and say some pretty nasty things at times, but I've also been guilty of this myself, and as a Christ follower, I ought to know better. But even though they say nasty things sometimes, it doesn't mean it's untrue. And it definitely does not make them bigoted or racist or anything else, any of these other disgusting terms that they've been accused of. It's like Elon Musk said recently in his interview with Don Lemon. Freedom of speech is only relevant when people say things that you don't like. Otherwise, it has no meaning. That is the fundamental truth about free speech. And it's something that people like Alex and Molly need to be reminded of. And I know, their arguments would be that channels like Star Wars Theory only serve to spread and incite violence and hatred and bigotry, blah, blah, blah. But that's a very audacious claim to make. You have to provide evidence, people. You have to back up that claim, because what you're accusing them of is disgusting. It's vicious. It's a very strong accusation. Those are fighting words in a very legal sense, especially if there's any kind of evidence of defamation here. Channels like Star Wars Explained and many others who have been a part of this harassment campaign are using the same tactic that tyrannical dictators have been using for decades. This is what they do to shut down their opponents. It can be very effective, and that's how the Nazis took over Germany, by the way. So good job, Star Wars Explained. You took a play right out of the Nazis' handbook. Impressive. I hope you're proud of yourselves. But this time, in the age of the internet, where it's much harder to make false claims without being refuted, the fans aren't buying it. This attack did not work. Even YouTube, as vague as some of their claims are, how they choose to shut down some channels and approve others, heck, they could shut down my channel anytime and I wouldn't be able to do anything about it, except maybe complain and appeal it, but anyways, the fans aren't going for it. This plot has been revealed to its true nature. Now, I want to share with you a passage from scripture that accurately describes Alex and Molly in the situation. Whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool. Proverbs 10:18. This is what they have done, and they have made their own hatred known. Ironically, you don't go after someone like this without there being some kind of hatred, bitterness, jealousy, vindictiveness in your heart. The good news is, although Star Wars Explained has dug themselves a deep hole and turned to the dark side, they have become the true villains. Let's not kid ourselves. There is still a chance for redemption, but it's going to require them to first humble themselves, admit their wrongdoing, and try and mend things with Theory and everyone else they targeted. My next suggestion would be to take a break from Star Wars content creation and examine your motivations and goals for your channel. And in fact, examine your heart and ask yourself, am I doing this for the right reasons? Am I being true to myself in the content I make? It's a very important question to ask yourself. It has to stem from passion. Otherwise, it just looks like a job. And you have to make me, the viewer, believe that you care and that you can be just a little bit more unbiased and maybe tolerant of differing opinions. It doesn't mean you have to agree. It just means that you have to live with the reality that there are people in this world who have different worldviews and different opinions than you about the same topics, and that does not make them terrible people. It does not make them hateful or bigot or racist or anything like that. Let me leave you, Alex and Molly, and all who share your views and were complicit in this campaign, with a plea and a call for your lives. Pursue peace with all men and the sanctification without which no one will see the Lord. Hebrews 12:14. You want to be on the moral high ground? You want to be a leader in the fandom? You want to defend the innocent and stand for good and holy and righteous things? You have to first go to the author and creator of all that is good and holy, Christ. Repent and make things right, or don't, and reap what you sow. I guarantee you, if you don't, and you double down on this horrible thing that you have done, you will have your payment in full, and I don't envy you.